Hey guys, welcome to our Zoom tonight on living with a rare disease. I'm Amanda Villarreal, and I look forward to sharing with you some information that I think will be very helpful for just motivation, inspiration, giving you some ideas and some suggestions on taking your health more seriously and learning to how to be proactive and some things that you can do to really make a difference. And as we're going through this, feel free to, at the end, ask some questions and feel free to message me anytime you have some specific questions. But because this is being recorded, I'm going to have you save your questions for the end after I stop the recording. So I am so glad you're here. A quick introduction of myself. My name is Amanda Villarreal. I'm a mom, a personal trainer, and a wellness and fitness professional and a nutritionist. And my goal and mission is to help educate people about the importance of health, of wellness, of exercise, of proper nutrition, and how honestly we can do this at any age. A little bit about my story. So I have been in health and wellness for almost 30 years, but my journey and my passion for wellness started when I was very young. I was born with a very rare vascular condition, and this is an extremely rare disease. About 1 in 100,000 people have some form of this Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome. But the thing that makes this very unique is that no two cases are alike. And you can see a little bit in this picture how it really shows, especially, when I was younger. My left side is much smaller than my right. I do have an 1.5-inch leg difference, and my whole left side is smaller than my right. And I had to really fight for where I am at today and for what I do as a healthy 45-year-old that is on no medications, and have really proved the industry wrong from a medical perspective, from what they had told me at a very young age, that basically I would not live a normal life, that I would not have kids, that I might lose my leg to amputation by the time I was 18, and that I should stop all physical activity. And at this time in my life, this was in middle school that I was told this, which I was avidly playing basketball and softball. And that was really what I loved to do, was staying active, and to be, focusing on staying active was something that I felt was very important to me. And that was kind of what led my journey into where I am at today. So I basically took my health into my own hands at a young age. And luckily, my parents were supportive of me, and I was able to continue to, push past some of the things that I was told I should do. For example, I was told I should have this 1.5-inch lift built on the bottom of my left shoe, that I should elevate my leg at all times. I was, again, given I should be on blood thinners the rest of my life, many different situations and scenarios and different doctors that I had met with. And I honestly believe that, there is a place for a lot of the techniques that we see and a lot of the protocols, but there's also times when we need to be more in charge and control of what our choices are and what we are doing for our health. Now, I have had 14 major surgeries now. So I have had 5 C-sections. I have had my appendix out, and all the rest have been to help with increasing circulation in my leg. So I've had many different procedures done, and I will mention a little bit about that as we get into this. But one of the things that I feel is important that, we don't hear about enough is the importance of food and how this affects our body. And again, you may think, I don't have anything like you. I don't have a vascular concern, or I don't have, even a rare disease. This is for everyone. And I, again, feel as though we need to get back to the concept that food is fuel. If we are not giving our body the proper nutrients, we are going to start to notice symptoms. Symptoms lead to disease. We want to avoid malfunctioning cells, and much of our cellular health comes from our nutrition and our choices that we are making every day. So the basic fuel that we look at giving our bodies is a combination of carbohydrates, fat, and protein. Now, one of the things that we are seeing in excess today is that more than 70% of our sodium is coming from packaged and fast food. And this is a huge concern. And for some of us that do struggle with, swelling, edema is very common, with a lot of our vascular diseases. But you will notice that, unfortunately, that swelling, the more that you eat sodium, the worse it gets. And that over time can be a huge concern, because that leads to other problems down the road. So this is what we're trying to get, that missing piece for many of us is to understand how our nutrition every day affects how we feel, how our bodies are functioning, and we want to learn more about how we can take control of our health. Now, another thing that is very important is to maintain a healthy weight. If you look at when you are carrying excess weight, if you look at obesity, and the statistics for obesity in children and adults is extremely alarming today. And, we could look at, I put a rough guideline for calories on here. We could look at our calories. We could look at, tracking certain things. But really, ultimately, it comes down to as many clients as I've worked with. Again, healthy adults, worked with people with all different conditions and health concerns. But it's about the types of foods we are eating, filling in the gaps, and making sure that we are trying to maintain a healthy weight. When you are overweight, it makes your body work so much harder, even a person at a healthy weight. If you think about every time, for example, if someone was to go for a jog, every time that they start to lift a foot and put the weight into one leg, you're absorbing 3 times your body weight. Think about someone that's carrying a whole lot of weight, how much more stress you are putting on your body. So when we are struggling to rebuild, to repair, to recover, we need to focus on getting back to some of those healthy nutritional choices, which are going to lead with helping to get us to a healthy weight. Now, I will tell you too, a big piece of what we have to work on is our mindset. I cannot emphasize that enough. So much of this comes from learning to pay attention to your body, of filling your mind with positive things and allowing yourself to be open to realizing where your weaknesses are and to work on getting your weaknesses to be closer towards your strengths. But now if we're looking at protein in particular, so protein is one of the things that we are finding is lacking more and more today in our diets. And when I say protein, this is good, high quality protein. So if you look at what protein does, this is a very important concept for, almost every system in your body has to function from protein. It is a building block. It is a staple. It's like building a house, but not putting the mortar between the bricks. We have got to have protein in order to keep our bodies ultimately working well. So I encourage you to look at how much protein you are having and look at the timing of your protein. We can't just have, 50 grams of protein for breakfast and then say, oh, I'm good for the rest of the day. Now I am recommending from latest research that on average, we want to be having, again, this is for a healthy person, 20 to 30 grams of protein at each meal. And again, start to look at some of your quantities of protein. You want to make sure, again, it's high quality and that we are distributing it throughout the day because we can't process too much protein at one time. But again, guys, we have to look at if we are noticing we have some areas we are struggling with. This is where more nutrition is extremely important. This means more protein, more of the right supplements, more of filling in the gaps, because we're not just functioning how we should be. We are functioning below optimal level, which means we are going to need maximum nutrition to help get us back to where we need to be. So when we look at protein, of course, we can try to get it through as many good food sources as we can, but I also am a huge fan of using the right, clean, non-GMO, high quality protein sources to fill in some of the gaps. And these are just a few of my favorites. And personally, I have used that Build and Build Plus after every surgery. I actually had a little trial that I had done a while back when I first started having surgeries where I did not do this immediately after I did the Build or Build Plus twice a day. And I can tell you, I was so much more sore. My recovery was that much slower. But I know personally some of the strategies that have worked very well for me. And one of them is a lot of protein immediately following things where trauma happens. So even think about if you have, any type of, procedure or something that is causing your body to have to work harder, extra stress, right? All of those things are going to be breaking down your body faster. So that's where that increased protein is, again, a very, very important sourcing that we want to make sure that we are getting enough of. Now, here's just a couple of super quick recipes. Feel free to screenshot these, but these are something that I keep on hand at all times, even for our kids, but love that these can be a very quick and healthy option to have available and to kind of help for some of us that maybe have a sweet tooth, because that's also one of the things that we really want to look at for optimal health and to really fuel ourselves is to reduce the amount of sugar we are adding into our diets. And added sugar is another thing that really we are noticing is a huge factor for what happens with even our brain health. They have done studies that have found that A high sugar diet actually affects our brain the same way a drug like cocaine does. It becomes very addicting. And that's why we notice we end up eating more calories because we feel like we need more. And then that helps to, again, create this cycle that can be very difficult for us to break. So we want to focus on that high quality protein, our carbohydrate sources. And again, if you're looking here, we are looking at sources that provide more of a balanced effect with high fiber, because we want to have everything broken down slowly so we can optimize the less risk of us struggling with cravings of doing the things that maybe we're reaching for the wrong snacks and we're grabbing things that are causing, our bodies to, again, have to suffer because of our choices. And healthy fats. Fats are key. If you go back to old school days, there were some trends of no fat, right? Low fat. That was a big, trend. And now we have proven is definitely not a good trend to be following, because we need healthy fats for our brain, for our joints, for our heart. And if we, again, have some issues that we are struggling with, a lot of times we may need even more healthy fats. And I am a huge fan of omegas, and we'll get into that also in a little bit. But think about how your cells are made up of protein, vitamins, and minerals. And if we're not giving our bodies these on a daily basis, you have to remember protein. In order for it to be absorbed, it has to have all 9 essential amino acids. Essential amino acids are acids that cannot be made in your body. You have to get them from your diet. So believe it or not, 1 in 3 Americans today are actually deficient in certain nutrients. Those of us that I have found that I've worked with that have had, again, I'm talking about autoimmune disorders, vascular conditions, digestive disorders. So many of these things are definitely linked with certain deficiencies. So this is where nutrition, I feel, is under talked about today. Now, I thought this was just kind of an interesting trivia question that I thought I would ask you all. So think about what your answer might be for how many rare diseases have been identified, A, B, or C. This just goes to show of how many 7,000 rare diseases today that we know of. And the scary thing about rare diseases is they are oftentimes misdiagnosed, they're mistreated, and they oftentimes don't have a lot of answers for solutions. Even unfortunately with my KTS, my Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome, there's nothing they can do. The surgeries that I do, basically it's to be proactive because I'm trying to eliminate down the road. I have so many veins that just continue to, even after we go in and do these procedures that actually they inject styrofoam into the veins and it causes the veins to collapse. And then the veins find their way around wherever we collapse those veins, but it's going to continue. Unfortunately, it's progressive. There's nothing you can do to stop it. But once again, it's what I can do to be proactive to minimize the long-term effects of this. So rare diseases, they are out there, but check out this trivia question. For people that have a rare disease, how long does it take on average to get an accurate diagnosis? And this, again, I think is very eye-opening of A, B, or C. On average, it takes 6 years for a rare disease to be diagnosed. This just goes to show, guys, that we can't always, wait. We need to start being, in a mindset that we are going to do what we can to start these strategies now. We're going to learn about things that can personally help us in whatever our situation is. And this is a lot of individualized, right? And that's what I do a lot with my one-on-one consulting, is helping to create specialized programs. I'm giving you general recommendations and a few things that, again, I personally have found helpful. One of the things that I would say has extremely, been important, that has kept me to be able to still teach and train full time and very active. I'm still running. Granted, I was told I should never run. I still do races. I'm still very active. Compression. If you have any type of swelling, joint, vascular concerns, compression is extremely important for support. I wear Jobst, is my favorite brand of stocking, and I actually wear a full toe all the way up to the top of my thigh to help with supporting the veins. Again, it's not going to stop the veins from forming, but 100% I can't even make it, honestly, through a day without having compression on. So it has been something that, again, I've had to adapt. I've had to learn to get used to. But if I didn't do it, I would definitely have a hard time being as active as I am. So that is one thing I have found to be extremely helpful, and finding a good medical community. Again, I encourage you to look at all of these alternative options and make sure they're safe. Make sure you do your research to find what are options that are going to be something you can instill without side effects, right? And without long-term consequences. But Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota has really been the only place I have found that has been able to help me. I had a local doctor here one time try to do, for example, injections in some veins, and it caused, bruising. I had a bunch of scars from it, and come to find out that is a procedure you should never do on people with Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome. And that's just one example that, you need to find the specialist for what it is you are dealing with. And again, we all have different needs. So my KTS might be different than someone else's, right? Because no two cases are alike. So we kind of have to get to know, what are the things that, certain doctors maybe specialize in, but I encourage you to take the time to do your research and don't guess. It's great to get other people's opinions, but also don't go with the first thing you are told. Again, this is where being educated, becoming a health advocate, and really learning the options out there for you are going to make a tremendous impact in what your choices are going to be for your long-term health. Your diet. We just talked through some diet solutions. Again, these are so important. Get back to plant-based, get back to whole foods, get back to thinking what God gave us. I do believe that getting back to nature is one of the best things that we can do for rebuilding our health. And also look at things like low sodium, because look at what sodium does, causes us to swell, causes higher amounts of inflammation. And inflammation is another thing that we need to avoid. When our C-reactive protein levels are increasing, that is going to increase symptoms for many things that we see today. Obviously, the amounts of cancer growing and many of the, long-term diseases that we see, even things like diabetes, we want to be really cautious of not overloading our system with any one thing. And again, look at the additional sodium and sugar that is in a lot of your packaged frozen foods. Anything that you can grab generally is not going to be something that is rebuilding your health. It is something that, again, if you look at the long-term effects of it, it's actually destroying your health. So I always say one great rule is when you go shopping at the store, shop the perimeter of the store. That's where you're going to find more real, more live foods. Those are the foods that have the vitamins and the minerals to help with rebuilding and helping with our body's optimal functioning. Supplements. Again, I do a lot with supplements, and I have personally been taking supplements since I was 17 years old, but I've also done a lot of research, and I got my degree in corporate fitness and wellness, and some of the classes I took in college were so minimal on the amount of nutritional education we get. Why am I mentioning that? Because oftentimes we will go to our general doctor and they're going to tell us, oh, take any vitamin you want, take any protein supplement you want, because they don't realize there are so many differences in supplements. You need to be very careful of over-the-counter, of places that are using unsafe ingredients, but they don't have to put them on the labels because there is no regulations on supplements. So this is something to really take note. I'm not telling you go use any supplements. You got to do your research. That is where I found when I was 17 years old, the company Shackley, that I have chosen to use their products since I was 17. Sorry about all the noise here. We just recently got a dog and our 5-year-old keeps letting him in and out over here. But we need to fill in the foundation of our gaps. And one of the ways we can do that is with a high quality multivitamin. You want to make sure you at least cover your bases. Now, again, for some of us that have, again, with my vascular disorder, I take a lot of extra supplements. I do a lot of things that are targeted towards slowing down cellular aging because I want to decrease how fast this progressive disorder continues, right? So I do a very different regimen that someone that has another concern or another area they're targeting. I just help someone today with Crohn's and putting them on a supplement regimen, very different than what I take, because again, we are all unique. So there is no one size fits all. So be careful if you're doing your research online and you're finding all of these, this gut health program will take care of all these symptoms. And this one is especially geared towards irritable bowel syndrome. It'll take care of all your concerns. There is no magic solution. So always be careful of that. But I do say you want to look at, good probiotics, especially if you are on a lot of medications. We do want to focus on our microbiome and our gut health. We also want to look at some things. For example, alfalfa is one that I use for swelling. It helps to neutralize your pH. It's very alkalizing. It's like a big green salad. But again, not all alfalfa is the same. And that has been one thing that I have taken every day for many years. Again, high quality protein, and that should actually say herb lax, but that is something that I use. And I just wanted to kind of highlight a couple of these because I think it's important. Again, you kind of understand, what makes some of these things different. When I talk about the processing of supplements, we want to be careful they're not using heat. We want to be careful of how they are. For example, soybeans are washed. If they're washed with alcohol, it's killing the live nutrients. Whereas if we are using something that, for example, this alfalfa product, for example, it is actually grown for 5 years before it's processed, in those roots are absorbing trace minerals, which is why this alfalfa is known as the king of all plants. But it really is something that creates in the body an effect I have lots of people that use this for allergies. They use this as a natural antihistamine, but it can also be, again, for swelling. We also use this when we do a lot of times a cleanse because it helps to pull heavy metals from the body. But think about the things that, again, some of the symptoms are related to an area that we need to pay more attention to. So if you kind of reading on the screen there, some of those things, that's going to be where you are going to be targeting what you need to fill your body with more. Constipation is another one I really want to mention because I do know a lot of people that do have, rare conditions and diseases. It seems like a lot of times because of maybe different surgeries or medications they've been on, prescriptions, that they are not having regular bowel movements. And we do need to address this. It's not something to be embarrassed about, but having regular bowel movements is extremely important because of the fact if you're not eliminating waste, it can build up in your system and continue to then slow down your liver, can cause so many other effects that if we ignore those can lead to very serious problems. So we want to make sure we are staying regular. And when we use products like Miralax, which is a very common one that, doctors will suggest, instead of it just working as a detoxifier, it works as mainly a laxative. And then that's causing everything to be flushed out of your system, including all the good. So what happens? We're dehydrated. We suddenly feel very weak, and that's creating a whole nother level of problems. So we want to have something that I have found, for example, this herb lax is very gentle. Now, even for something, again, after having surgery, a lot of times that's a very common problem is they'll give you something to help with afterwards to get your bowel stimulated. I would take, and I have taken every time, herb lax over anything that's ever been recommended. And, I've had great success. And I learned the hard way after having my first C-section of what it feels like to have major constipation. And I was actually terrified for our second one that I would have the same problem. So I brought this with me to the hospital and have never forgotten it since, because if you've ever dealt with severe constipation, it is absolutely horrible. So let's look at something else we can do to also help with bowel health, help with constipation. We need to be moving. I cannot emphasize this enough. And again, all ages. For example, we shouldn't have any excuses. All right. Now I know that, you might say, oh, that's easy for you because you're a trainer and, you do this every day. But it's not easy for me. And honestly, most of the people that, you talk to that you think like exercise, they don't. They have a reason to do it. And I always say, I move now because I want to be able to move later. And that is something that sticks in my head. I have to be really cautious of the risk of blood clots. So, one of the ways that I'm proactive is I have to make myself move every day. Even right now, I'm at a standing desk. I have to try to keep blood flow because that is, one of the concerns that I know comes with this condition. This is a picture actually from our park workout this summer. We had about 60 people there of all ages working out together. It was such a fun experience. But again, you notice just looking at these people, everybody looks different, right? Different shapes, different sizes. It doesn't matter. We all need to be moving more. And I don't just mean going for walks. We need to be doing things that are increasing our heart rates. We are working on strength training. We need to do more to build our muscle. And maybe you say, well, I can't lift weights because I have a shoulder issue. And that's part of my, reason why I don't do XYZ. But you know what? If you have an issue with your shoulder, you can still use your legs. You can still use your core. If you have an issue with your legs, you still have your upper body. Like there's always things that we can do to help move our bodies and do the things that we need to do to stay with a balanced focus in our exercise regimens. That means we are working flexibility, also mobility. That is a huge one too. We need to be doing things that are helping with functional movements. That means we're tying in things like balance training because we want to be prepared that if unfortunately, it happens, especially as we get older. Our risk for injury continues to really increase. So doing things that can help improve our balance. If we are stronger and we do happen to fall, we're going to be that much more likely to catch ourselves, which will reduce our risk of injury. So all of this is just things that we need to be thinking about on a daily basis. Are you moving enough? And are you doing the right types of activities? And along with those activities, we want to make sure that we are drinking and we are hydrating enough. And again, I see this a lot with people that are struggling with illness, is usually when you don't feel good or you're in a lot of pain, that we don't drink enough water. That's one of the first things to go is people don't want to hydrate, but we need to make sure we are doing that to get rid of toxins. Again, it will help with swelling, and it helps if you think about our body being, the range is anywhere from 70 to 80% water, that we need to be drinking that every day. Our bodies don't make it, right? And if they're mostly made of it, we need to be replacing it. And when the weather is hotter, we also need to look at, for sweating more, how to replace those lost minerals, because those are also linked to a lot of different systems in our body, which can trigger imbalance. And you'll also notice things like muscle cramping. So I'm a big fan of electrolytes, but once again, be careful of the types of electrolytes that are out there. Again, I want you to be educated to understand, that maybe some of the things we think are doing are healthy, maybe are not. That's what I love to do, is help teach people small changes that can affect their long-term health. Small changes, for example, using Gatorade. If you were to learn what really goes into that, it is an unbalanced source of electrolytes. It is generally filled with artificial sweeteners. It has artificial colors oftentimes. And we want to be very careful of some of these that are now enhanced with energy. So we now see Red Bull being an extremely popular product, but anytime we are noticing, high caffeine sources, that there are side effects to those. Again, we want to be keeping things that are going to keep our body working at a high maintenance place, but not using a natural stimulant to make us feel that way. So you'll see Hydrate Plus there is a product that we, again, personally love. No artificial colors, flavors, but again, it works well. And I can always tell a huge difference when I use this to hydrate versus anything else I've ever tried, and even for my clients. So for exercising, we're hydrating. We also need to make sure we are recovering and we are sleeping enough. Don't underestimate either the importance of sleep, but I also want to make sure you steer clear of napping too much. All right. So I know a lot of times, again, when people don't feel well, when they have a lot of trouble sometimes with just getting moving, the tendency is to lay around more, which will make you more tired, which will take more naps, which will affect your quality of sleep. So I want you to think about things that you can do during the day to make you more proactive, and think about how you can fill your diets with the things that you need to help with recovery. So then during the day, by the time you get to the night and you're ready to go to sleep, you feel good. You feel ready to go to bed, and that's going to help you to rest what we would love to see, 8 to 9 hours. And I know for many of us, including myself, I would say 7 to 8 is probably, usually what happens for me, considering I teach or train every morning at 5:30 a.m. So I have to, schedule my time, but that is an importance for me, is making sure, because if I don't, that is the one thing that I know leads to me getting sick, is if I'm not getting enough sleep. So again, these are things we need to be, realizing for ourselves. Are we doing these things that are actually pretty basic, but oftentimes they've slipped through the cracks? Now, ice and heat are also two great things to note. If you may be someone that struggles with back pain, for example, learning, is ice better? Is heat better? And when do I need to do this? And stretching, don't again forget to stretch, because that's also going to help with that mobility we talked about earlier, helping to keep blood flowing, and even doing things where you're creating, like, for example, inversions, like putting your legs up on a wall, or, I teach a lot of, fitness yoga type style classes where, we allow ourselves to drop our head in like a forward fold. And all of that is so good for your brain and to reverse blood flow and to help with circulation. Along with, again, for sleep, there are a lot of great supplements. If you notice you struggle with sleeping, I'd be happy to give you some suggestions. So for tuning in, I did create here this special 7-day meal plan that I'd be happy to share with you all. And this is something that is geared towards helping to get inflammation out of your body, but it also gives you some great examples of what I'm talking about with dealing with whole food. So I think that, again, this becomes one of the biggest things that we need to see today, is how we can make those changes that help us to maximize our choices, maximize how we feel. Our proper nutrition is key to unlocking your body's potential. And this is for everyone. But remember, if you are someone that is struggling with certain areas. And this could even be something you're dealing with, menopause or hormone issues. There are so many different levels of what I would still consider to be, very, it can change your whole quality of life. And that means we need to be learning more about these strategies that we can do. So I'm going to encourage you guys. I'm going to open up here for a second for Q&A for those that are staying on. But otherwise, I'm going to stop this recording. But feel free to message me, reach out anytime if you do have some specific questions or anything that you maybe specifically want some help with. And I am pretty excited for an upcoming 12-week boot camp that I'm going to be releasing here very soon. That'll be available by an app or by a website where I'm going to actually be giving you details of nutrition, of exercise programs, and really working to get you back into, understanding what it means to be healthy. So again, would love comments, questions, reach out anytime. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.